To change the subject, what do you think about the Terry Schiavo case? I have not heard of it. If you give me a second, I'll Google it real quick to see what that's about. But I haven't heard of it. I've never heard of it before. I wonder what that is. Oh my God. Okay. Okay. Let's see what we got here. So Terry something. George Bush had to step into this case. Really? I wonder what this is about. Let's see. So if I take this Terry Schiavo case, let's see what this is about here. If I rip you out, put you here, come this Terry Schiavo case. Ooh, what is that? Was a series of court and legislative actions in the United States from 1998 to 2005 regarding the care of this person, a woman in irreversible, persistent vegetative state. A vegetative state? Oof. Okay. Predictions. Probably maybe something to do about like if nobody's going to care for them, and like then what is like does the state have to care for them, or are they just condemned to just die on their own? Maybe something like that. Well, let's see. I don't know like what vegetative stuff we be talking about. We'll see. So let's see. So the Terry, I'll just say Terry, right? The Terry case was a series of court and legislative actions in the United States from this period regarding the care of this person from this time period. A woman in an irreversible vegetative state. Her husband and legal guardian argued that she would not have wanted prolonged artificial life support without the perspective of recovery, and in 1998 he elected to remove her feeding tube. Yeah, so see, her right to life. Man, how did I get it right? See, about like nobody that wants to care for him, right? Dude, does the state have to step in and do it, right? Okay, the abortion debate got popular after this one. Yeah, of course, right? So let's see. Her parents disputed her husband's assertions and challenged the medical diagnosis, arguing in favor of continuing artificial nutrition and hydration. The highly publicized and prolonged series of legal challenges presented by her parents, which ultimately involved state and federal politicians up to the level of George W. Bush, the then U.S. president, caused a 7-year delay before her tube was ultimately removed. See, so 1990, age 26, she went into cardiac arrest at her home. She was resuscitated but had massive brain damage due to lack of oxygen in her brain and was left comatose after 2.5 months without improvement. Her diagnosis was changed to that of persistent vegetative state. For the next 2 years, doctors attempted occupational therapy, speech therapy, physical therapy, and other experimental therapy, hoping to return her to a state of awareness without success. Damn, that sucks. Because they consider what defines somebody that has consciousness, what makes us human. If you can, I would like to hear your opinion about it. So, okay, I'm gonna read a little bit about more, then I'll see where I kind of come to the conclusion of. Let's see. So, next 2 years, they tried, couldn't do it. Her husband petitioned the 6th court to remove her feeding tube, pursuant to Florida law. He was opposed to Terry's parents. The court determined that person would not have wished to continue life-prolonging measures. On this day, her feeding tube was removed for the first time, only to be reinserted several days later. Wait, so they removed her feeding tube and then she was still alive? Okay, so maybe that might be that might be a little crazy. That might be a little crazy. Hold on. Okay. So 2005, court judge again ordered the removal of her feeding tube. Several appeals, federal government intervention followed that included Bush returning to D.C. to sign legislation moving the case to federal courts after appeals through the federal court system that upheld the original decision to remove feeding tube staff. Staff at the hospice facility disconnected the feeding tube 2008, and then she died on the 31st, 2005. The case involved 14 appeals, numerous legal petitions, and blah, blah, blah. Okay. So, just based off of that so far. So, okay. Talking about the case itself, to me, that's actually kind of crazy because so if the person's in a vegetative state, let's just assume that, what's presented is just like 100% valid, right? We're not getting into the whole consciousness debate or anything like that. If somebody's in a vegetative state and they're on life support, if the argument is that she wouldn't be, she wouldn't want herself to be like that, or she's not even necessarily human anymore per se with respect to consciousness or anything like that, it's kind of crazy to me that we remove her feeding tube and then just let her naturally, essentially, like, I guess, starve and suffer herself to death. To me, that's a bit kind of crazy. I can, on the one hand, I can understand it if the argument is that she's not even there anymore. So like it's just a body that's just naturally like decomposing or dying or whatever. I suppose. On the second hand, I think because we don't truly know, like, consciousness and things like that in the brain is a very difficult thing to ascertain. So it would have been much better that, since the argument was that she wouldn't want herself to be in that state for the rest of her life until she naturally died, I don't understand why they didn't then just terminate her life peacefully, like, with with an instant with instant results, kind of like what we do with terminally ill patients. If I'm not mistaken, like, terminally ill people can elect to just to kind of just pack themselves up, right? Have the state pack them up. And so I don't know why they would not do that for somebody like her and just let her essentially start. Because then, if we're potentially wrong, because it's just like with the abortion thing, right? If we are wrong, right, which I'll be, as somebody who's pro-choice with restrictions, right, I have no problem acknowledging that we could potentially be wrong. And the moment where two cells combine together, like, there's a soul and a consciousness that just all of a sudden just plops into it. I don't believe that, and I doubt that's even the case. But let's say if we are wrong, right, if we are wrong, we should be taking measures to at least try to mitigate the impact of the potential if we are indeed wrong. So for her, she just got to sit there, and if we were wrong and then she still has some type of consciousness, we just was like, okay, well, you're gonna for the next however long it takes, you about to be in a world of hurt, pain, and suffering until you just naturally die, which to me is kind of crazy. It's kind of crazy that we would do that. But now on the other side of that, if we're we're probably not wrong in the sense that, just essentially brain dead for all intents and purposes. I'm not a medical expert, so I'm gonna just assume that was more or less the conclusion they kind of came to. And so, to me, doing this is perfectly fine as far as letting the person die. Like I say, we do it with terminally ill people who are alive, right, who are fully conscious. They're just they have either a very limited lifespan, or they're just going to be in a tremendous amount of pain and suffering, and they don't want to have to sit there and live the rest of their life like that, and they rather just get packed up, so that's kind of where I'm at on that particular case. Now, in terms of the broader conversation when it comes to abortion and like, whether like these individual cells are actually like human lives and whatnot, to me, I'm not at all convinced that the moment these two the moment the sperm and the egg cell combine, that this just immediately just means that these people are, these things, this is a human life and a human consciousness into it. The argument can be made that after a certain point of development, obviously, that this would be the case, but where that's at, is obviously disputed. So for me, I would sit there and I would say that in terms of abortion, we should obviously be on the conservative side of it and assume that relatively early in the process is like human life and whatnot. So that's why, like me, like, I'm pro-choice, but with obvious restrictions. Because, like, look, I might have said this already before, but like, for anybody, especially any potential women that hears me say this before, because I'll stand 10 toes down on this. Okay, if you go 90 days, because I would sit there and say like 3 to 4 months around about should be like where we then you can't have it unless like there's a medical necessity for it, obviously. But like, if you manage to go 3 months without a period, assuming there's no, because there's always some crazy medical condition that could make you the unique individual. This is the general populace I'm talking about. You go 90 days. If you go 60, first off, you go 60 days is kind of crazy. But if you go 90 days and don't have a period and don't think them, there might be something wrong that I might want to get checked out, especially for like, I don't know, pregnancy. And it's just some massive surprise to you that you ended up pregnant after, because you didn't have a period for like 4 months, 5 months. And that's when you're just realizing that, oh, you're pregnant, right? You deserve to have your vagina rescinded from you. Like, absolutely, you deserve to have you're not taking care of it properly, obviously. So you need to have it rescinded from you. You're not allowed to have it any longer from that point forward. All right. I would sit there and say that anybody that sits there and does it like within 90 days, probably more or less, like I'm being general here, there could be some caveats and specifics, but if if you go that long without checking to see if you're pregnant, and then it's just a surprise that you're pregnant, like, I'm sorry, you're just like, yeah, you're keeping that baby at that point, especially if there's, I said, we're going to be on the conservative side here and assume that, like I said, at some point in development, it is a human life. So we can't pinpoint that. So let's try to cut it a little closer to the middle, please.